Right guys, so version 1.9 of Assetto Corsa Competizione has dropped, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick run through of the physics mainly, so focusing on the updates. So we have new damper models, new tyre models. I think the aero has been tweaked a little as well in some areas. Basically there's a whole batch of stuff that's been done and changed in this sim, and I am going to jump into the new cars as well. I'm going to do a couple of laps in each of the new models, so the Lambo, the Ferrari, and the Porsche as well. But the reason I'm in this car, the Aston Martin GT3, is because I race this car in my leagues. So it's a car that I'm very familiar with. So I thought, what better way to actually give an opinion on the new updated physics and stuff than to actually jump into a car that I understand and that I'm aware of deeply at this stage. So yeah, here we are. So I did do a quick 20-minute practice run earlier today after work, before the update went, or sorry, after the update went live. I'd installed it, gave it a quick 20-minute blast just to get used to this track, to be honest. And I could feel already certain differences in the physics. It definitely drives differently, that's for sure. Anyone that says this is the same or still typical ACC, I don't necessarily agree with that. This feels, initially at least, this feels a lot more like the likes of Automobilista 2. And what I mean by that is the dynamicism in the racing, right? So ACC had typically got this very, I won't say robotic is probably the wrong word, but it was very much pointed in the right direction, and the car wouldn't really be too dynamic through the corner. I mean, sure, you could oversteer it, you could understeer it, go too deep or whatever, but mid-corner there was no real battle with the car. And this is something that Automobilista done really well. Overshot that one there, just gone in too deep. Tyre pressures are not up correctly. But basically the differences here is that the car could be kind of leaned on mid-corner. It was much more dynamic in how it drove. And you can see that here as well, that when I'm in the middle of the corner, the car wants to react, it wants to do things. And that's something that, arguably we didn't get much of on the previous versions, and here you can see I can kind of play with it with the throttle to get it round. And this again was something that in previous versions of the game, like 1.8 and so on, that any sort of throttle play like that would, let's say, risk slipping the back and engaging the TC would basically just kill all acceleration. So that wasn't I won't say it wasn't fun to drive, it just wasn't as dynamic. It was very much, there's one way to drive it and that's really it. Where with this version, I feel it's a bit more changeable. When you're in the middle of the corner, you can fight the car, you can do all of that stuff, and it definitely reflects that in the force feedback, in the dynamics, the actual physics of the car. And you can see there mid-corner, I'm trying to feel the grip to get back on throttle, how much speed can I carry, and then just overshooting that. But again, I can turn it with a bit of throttle, and you have that dynamic fight through the corner. Now, because I'm not too familiar or too good with this track yet, this kind of shows what I'm talking about absolutely perfectly, because I am going to be making tiny little braking area errors and stuff like that. And I think that having that happen means I have to kind of correct and adjust my line mid-corner. I have to manipulate the car a little bit with brakes and throttle. And you couldn't really do that in previous versions of this game, like not to get rotation on the car, that's for sure. And for the Aston Martin, of all cars, to be a bit edgy again, that's new. That's new, and that's kind of unexpected in ACC.
Watch these track limits, please, Gary.
Curb handling is a lot better on the dampers. I'll do 1 or 2 more laps in the Aston before we jump into the Ferrari, but yeah, you can definitely notice, and you can almost get it to turn on the nose if you manipulate it correctly. just chick the brake bias back a tiny bit. Okay. Let's try and concentrate and get some sort of non-invalidated lap in. Yeah, you can definitely manipulate the car mid-corner. You could not do it like that before. And like I say, the other sims that allow that is the likes of Automobilista 2 or Factor 2 to a degree will allow that as well. Something that was kind of missing in ACC, if I'm honest. I've done everything else really good. You know, the driving feel was good, the force feedback was great, but I think this tyre model, this update, has definitely added a dynamic feel. Now, funnily enough, I was driving GT4s not so long ago, and I do know that they got a tyre model update before the GT3s in 1.9 update. And I remember stepping away from the GT4s thinking, wow, these feel great to drive, definitely different. And now we have that in the GT3, you know, GT3s with the extra downforce and all of that, just make it a really, really fun experience and very enjoyable to drive, very dynamic, very not by the book. And I think my initial feeling is that on this particular patch of the game, I do think that the driver will be able to influence the lap time a lot more. On previous versions, on reflection, it would appear that if you had a nice setup and you were able to drive it or tolerate it, that would be enough for a good lap. But I don't think that's going to be the same on this patch. I mean, it's early to tell, of course, right? The setup will obviously make a bit of a difference if you can drive it. But what I'm saying is that when you're driving it, the driver, I think, will definitely have more of an input than previously. Yeah, this feels really, really nice to drive. Oh, a little bit wide. And there you can see the back of it just stepping out, yawing around as you brake and give it turn at the same time. Commit to that. The bump stop compresses, the chassis flexes and lifts. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Okay, still have a bit more practice to do on this track, of course, but what are we at, 32.8?
That was at 32.84.
Yeah, so not
3's 2/10 off your best.
not ideal by any means. Let's flick back to the garage.
What's your speed?
Yeah, let's just get a quick replay. But yeah, I mean, the driving dynamic from a car that I'm familiar with in the Aston, it's definitely different. It's quite a bit different in my opinion. And bear in mind, I'm not running the usual like negative toe sort of metas or any of that stuff. All I've done is I've taken a default aggressive for this, and I think I've changed the rake by 2 or 3 clicks. And yeah, toe settings on the default aggressive unchanged. And look at that, how the car just rides the curb beforehand. And I think they've made changes to the collision box as well beforehand. Curb that size at that speed would have launched the car into orbit. So the curb handling is better, and I think that's to do with the bump stop adjustments, where the bump stop actually will have a stop, when it compresses, and then it transfers to the chassis, and the chassis lifts. I think what was happening before was the bump stop had an infinite amount of compression on it, meaning that the car would never actually get the full whack of transfer, and the bump stop would compress and compress and compress without raising the chassis, and then all of a sudden the chassis hits the curb and bang, you're in takeoff mode. But let's pause this here. Let's go and get one of the other cars, maybe the Lambo. We'll do a few laps. I just want to see how that compares. to the previous Evo of the Lambo, and we'll take it to the same track again. So yeah, let's jump into that next. Right, so here we are at the Lambo. Again, I've just got my default aggressive aero. I'll just raise the ring by a couple of clicks and raise the rake by a couple of clicks, because I do believe that this track is one that likes a bit of downforce. But yeah, let's see. A quick few laps, 24 litres of fuel, nothing too crazy. And yeah, let's go for it. The car looks great, doesn't it? The inside, really, really cool. What dashboard have we got? What dash displays? Okay, that doesn't change. Car interior looks great. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, the inside looks really cool, similar to the current Huracan Evo. In the VSR car, Roger Dubuis on the rear, and yeah, I've fired up and come on as
Push now.
Rolf and Icon on this one. So let us get a couple of laps in.
Heat into these brakes.
All right, I used to drive the Lambo before moving to Audi, and and after that, then most recently the Aston. So I am familiar with the Lambo. But yeah, let's go for it. So again, default aggressive setup, not many changes, just a bit of rake. And let's see how this compares. Now usually the Lambo can be quite push understeery, the Evo one and the original one as well. And as well as that, some of the meta setups on the previous patch would call for a really soft suspension, and that made the car very unstable on brakes. Like one example would be turn 1 or 2 at Imola, for example, where you're coming in on the brakes from high speed and the car just gets all unsettled and it's not very happy. This, by comparison, is very, very stable. Feels really nice to drive. Feels similar to the current Evo. Oh shit. Okay, that was a bit aggressive over the curb. That was more me than the car. Yeah, it's like anything with curb handling, isn't it? I mean, the car can help, but you have to give it a chance. And I didn't give it much chance there. But yeah, the car looks and sounds great. Typical Lambo with the V10. Seems to understeer a little on the default setup. Now that being said, I haven't driven this car in a good while, so I am a little rusty on it, but at the same time, I think any Lambo drivers they're going to spend a bit of time with it. They will dial in the setup, I think, pretty handy. Bring the brake bias back a few clicks. Yeah, you can feel the front brake away there on brake, and just as I was coming into that corner and I had steering lock on, I could actually feel the front end kind of break away, and I can also feel through the force feedback. It's almost like I don't know if it's the ABS or just the tyre kind of skipping a little bit across the surface. Feels really good. It's giving me good kind of tactile feedback as to what's going on. But I just think on this setup, maybe the car feels a little bit too safe. But like I say, it's nothing that can't be fixed. It handles curbs way better than before, I think. The Lambo was never bad at it, but certainly on this patch with the new dampers and stuff, it does feel that bit more compliant and more progressive as well, and you can feel the bump transfer to the chassis, which is nice. Let's play around with some TC settings just to see what sort of difference it might make. I'll try to push a little bit, but again, I don't know how much push will be in the car.
Okay, Gary, you need to watch the track limits.
Oh, I like that. I could feel myself being able to turn that on throttle. That was really nice without the TC kind of killing me the way it normally would in previous patches. And when I say killing me, what I mean is lap time wise, not the car itself. On previous patches, that sort of let's say throttle and TC engagement in this car typically would send it understeering into Narnia.
So good.
misjudged that corner a tiny bit. But yeah, this feels really nice to drive again. Just like my current Aston, you can definitely feel how the physics have changed. It behaves like the tyre model is very, very similar. Well, it's the same, obviously, but you get the point. It's driving in the same way, you're working off the same sort of book, the same page. Alright, let's do one more lap. Then we'll jump into maybe the Ferrari or something, or maybe the Porsche. Great looking car, the Lambo. Let's try and get at least one clean lap in. I have to say, I do like this track. When it was announced that this was the circuit coming into the game initially, I wasn't too happy, to be honest, because you know, I'd seen it on TV and I thought, well, that's going to be just a, you know, boring type, flat-ish type of circuit. At least that's how it looks on TV. But I can say from driving it here, it is absolutely fantastic. I really like it. It's definitely among my favourites already, and I don't even know it that well. But it's got a great mix of corners, you know, slow corners, fast corners, bankers, tight ones, direction changes, braking areas that tighten, like this next one. It's like you're braking into a tightening radius, and look at that, that's fantastic, it's just brilliant. And then the next corner where we've got a quick direction change to negotiate a curb, where the next corner and the next curb kind of stick out just like that, and you're kind of, you know, trying to battle with yourself, right, how much of this can I actually take. Just gives a great experience. And then, you know, we start all in the next lap with turn 1 being a fast left-hander. Oh, that slide would have cost a bit of time. Should be still on for a 33, hopefully, or something like that.
Last lap time
okay.
1:33.93. That's your quickest lap in this session.
Yeah, I definitely think with a bit of setup work, we could definitely squeeze another second at least out of that car. There's a lot of untapped potential there. I could feel on that default setup. For me, at least, how I drive, it just felt a little bit understeery. Mid to exit. Entry was nice and stable, but yeah, I mean, the car looks great. Brilliant onboard shots as well, and yeah, I think typical Kunos that when they release a DLC, it is top notch as always, isn't it? And the quality so far, the physics and the force feedback update, and the suspension and all of that stuff just feels really, really good. It's like a different sim in many respects. And people will say, like, oh, it's not different, it's the same. It's like, it is and it isn't. I mean, you know, the feel, the drive, and I think how you will be fast on this game, I think has changed. I don't think you know, what we've done up to this point, I don't think will apply as much anymore. I do think that to be fast, it's going to require a different approach from a driver. But anyway, let's stop this here. Let's go and get the Ferrari, and let's jump back in.
Cross the white line.
Alright guys, so here we are then, back in the 296 GT3. I've changed the time of day to...
we need to get some heat into them.
Changed the time of day to 5 PM just to kind of get a bit of a different ambient, just to see maybe the sunset or whatever. But yeah. There's the car. Looks great. Looks a bit. I really like the cockpit. Really like the cockpit. I think it's great. Lots of nice information. Let's see what dashboards we have. So we have that one, and then we have that one with the information off. Okay, so you have those two dash displays, but yeah, whatever.
Your tyres are cold. Watch out.
Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll just do kind of a 1 or 2 scoping laps just to see kind of how this feels, and already it's very pointy. Now I should prefix this and say this is on one of the new CDA setups. So CDA today had these well, the 296 version ready to go now. I'm not sure if it's just for the CDA subscribers or whether it's across the board. I don't know which, but you know, either way, it's on a CDA setup. Now I can say that from looking at it, there is no crazy negative tow going on, so the setup as I look at it in the menu seems to be sensible and relatively realistic. So yeah, it doesn't appear to be running any, like, let's say, meta setup approaches, let's say. But man, the downforce on this car is bonkers. A lot of downforce, and one thing I find that you can be a bit sloppy on entries here. I'm being a bit sloppy, and you can recover from it. It's like certainly less punishing to bad driving, I think, than the other two cars I've driven so far. This is this could be the new McLaren, like, in terms of driver friendliness in a mid-engine car. But that driver friendliness, like, sometimes the McLaren could have been arguably a bit boring to drive, and I did main that car for a little while too in my earlier days at ACC. But I have to say that this car feels very, very safe. Little twitchy on the little twitchy on the entry. That's just me being a bit reckless there, though. But you can see, though, that, you know, despite kind of getting all out of shape, that we're still okay, we're still alive, you know.
You've just done a 134.52. You're now 0.6 off your best.
Oh man, the downforce on this is crazy. It's like driving an LMP car, and it's noticeably more than the other two cars. Very pointy front end, very compliant, balanced car. It goes where you point it and is willing to do it. What a car! This is this is great.
Sector 1 time was good.
I think I may have found my next new car here. Of course, it all depends what lap times it produces. I'm sure it's been pegged back in other areas, like maybe the engine is not as powerful, maybe BOP'd a little bit. I'm guessing it would have to be, given the amount of downforce, but like with everything in GT racing, it's kind of, you know, what you gain in one area is lost in another, and that's what gives us the great racing that we're so used to with GT3 and indeed ACC.
Sector 2 time is quick.
But this car is very, very sharp handling. Very sharp, very pointy, very compliant. Oh, just went in a bit hot there. But yeah, despite the car feeling sharper and stuff, it's still done a similar time to the Aston. So make what you will of that. We'll do one more. Feels like I can almost abuse the entries, and I'll get away with it and turn it on a partial throttle, maybe 3/4 throttle, let the TC do a bit of the work, let me do the rest. Yeah, this is brilliant. Great car, feels fantastic. Yeah, I really like this car.
Sector 1 time's okay.
I really like this car. It's one of those that I just think I'm going to click with from a driving style point of view. Yeah, I love this car, man. Do you want to know what I think of the Ferrari? Yeah. Yeah, alright. Not a bad lap there, quicker of the lot, but
You've just done a 132.77. Good lap. That's your quickest today.
yeah, that's a very nice car to drive. It really suits my style, so that's interesting. Yeah, again, as I say, you're able to manipulate these cars mid-corner now a little bit, where you couldn't do that before. Not so much. And that mid-corner manipulation, if I'm honest, is something I really liked about Automobilista 2. It's something even R-Factor 2 done really well. And, you know, it was arguably missing in ACC. Now, it didn't matter too much in ACC because, you know, they're GT3 cars. So, gentleman driver cars, friendly cars to drive, stable, all of that good stuff. But yet, you know, if we're honest, looking back in hindsight, up to version 1.8, which is the last one we had prior to this, to be fast, you almost had to run these setups that were super twitchy, and despite being a stable kind of simulator, you had to kind of run the thing on the knife edge. Like anyone that's driven, for example, you know, the Honda NSX or whatever, could relate to that. Been there, done that myself. The Audi would be similar, the Lamborghini, even the Ferrari to a point would be similar. And then I suppose recently then the Mercedes, even in ACC, for a front engine car, man, that was dicey, particularly at the top of Eau Rouge and stuff. So despite it being like a safe feel in its normal driving, to get the car turned in and be fast and stuff like that, you had to run these aggressive setups, and they only became aggressive and dicey after turn-in, you know what I mean? On entry mainly. The exit and stuff was fine once you survived the entry phase of the corner. The rest of it was just point and hit the throttle. But with this, you don't have that anymore. It's kind of like the entry to the corner is a bit of an event. When you're in the corner, the mid corner is a bit of an event. You can manipulate a little bit, so if you've gone in too hot or not hot enough, you can use the throttle or the brake or a combination of both with the steering, and it actually has a bigger impact now than it did before. A much bigger impact from what I can feel. It certainly comes back into force feedback. It's so much fun to drive. And like I said earlier, I think that drivers now will have a bigger impact on how these cars actually deliver their lap time. Because I feel that to get the lap time, you have to drive it a lot differently. There's more going on in the mid-corner phase, that's for sure. That's for damn sure. But anyway, let's park this here. We'll go and get the Porsche, and I just noticed there's a pitot tube on that Ferrari. So that silver thing pointing out the front, basically the air pressure hits the front of it and it determines the speed of the car. They're used in aircraft and stuff. So yeah, crazy to see it on a car. But anyway, it's there. So yeah, let's go and get the Porsche and come back to Valencia and see what we think of that. Alright guys, so back in the Porsche 992 GT3R. Alright, so here we are. What a car, looks great.
The track temperature's rising, it's now
the
1 Celsius.
Cup version of this drives really, really well. So let's see what this sounds like and looks like and stuff like that. So yeah, it looks really cool.
Got cold brakes all round, be careful.
And let's see what it sounds like. Oh yeah, like the Cup car, in fact. That's a good thing. Yeah. Okay, let's just do a kind of quick lap or two just to get the tyres up to temperature and see what this feels like. So I can feel this is strange actually. I know the tyres are not up to temperature, right, but the front feels quite understeery and light if and when it breaks traction at the front, and it's almost like you can feel more weight at the rear. Now I know that the weight of the car is at the rear, but it's good and strange that I can actually feel it in the force feedback. That's quite interesting. It's like you break traction, but you can feel this weight holding you back, not letting you turn anymore. But then, whoa, shit! When you when you got on the brakes at speed, then the back wants to pendulum around. Okay, so we're starting to figure out what this car wants to do. Oh shit! All right, that's me just being a bit too aggressive. Revs out for days, doesn't it? Over 9,000 revs. Oh yeah, you can feel the back of it. Okay, I don't mind track limits, just getting used to the car, but you can definitely feel the back is a little temperamental. Just going to increase the anti-lock brake because I just don't want the rear wheel locking at any point with all the weight back there with the engine. Feels really nice though. Definitely feels a little Porsche-like in how it behaves, but drives totally different to the current 99, the current Porsche. There's that understeer. Just when you go past a certain steering angle, it's like the steering goes completely light. And then you fight the back of it on the way into corners, particularly with this, because the rear wants to step round. If you give this too much kind of steering input while braking or turning, particularly when the weight is pitched forward, you do definitely notice the back wants to fight you and come around under braking. Initially it feels less likely to want to oversteer out corners. Let me just bring down the traction control a little bit. Traction control 1 at least. And just see, does that make any difference? Oh, too far, too deep. Does the traction control make much of a difference? Seems to maybe a little bit. Gets a little bit more rotation at the back. Yeah, slightly. Which is, what you'd expect. That front end driftiness, once it drifts in the corner and you get back on it and you're still understeering, it's difficult to get the front end traction back at that point. Which, you'd expect. Yeah, this update to ACC is definitely a good one, I have to say. Very enjoyable to drive as well.
Brake temperature looking good.
Yeah, and you can see that curb interaction getting transferred into the car, into the chassis. And obviously then the chassis is flexing a little bit. Yeah, this is great. Let's get one more lap in. Okay.
Alright Gary, we need to watch these track limits.
Can't believe that wasn't validated, but anyway. Yeah, that's one thing I noticed actually. Now it could be setup related, right? But I do notice that coming out of corners, the car is very much planted out of all of the ones that I've driven. It's probably the least likely to want to get upset out of a corner. But where the challenge is with this is kind of coming into fast kind of corners that require braking. That's where the back of it starts to get a bit squirrely. See, just like that. And I do that just to kind of exaggerate the point, but you can see that as soon as that weight pitches forward with the engine at the back, it wants to kind of come around. But yeah, typical of the Porsches. We bounce along there. Probably wouldn't have bounced like that in the previous patch. We would have hit the ground and then taken off again. But yeah, the car kind of settled much quicker. Let's do one more lap. Okay, one more lap. Yeah, you probably noticed me fighting the mid-corner, which is one thing that I commented on earlier as well. And it gives this whole new driving dynamic to the game that just wasn't there before. And it's that dynamic, for me at least, why I love Automobilista 2 so much, in the driving feel department. But ACC have this now. They have it and they've nailed it. That's not to say, I mean, Automobilista 2 is a fantastic title in its own right, but it's great to see that now, oh shit. Alright, can't win them all, but it's great to see ACC now finally making those changes in that dynamic feel of the car. So overall, what do I think of this, right? So, yeah, version 1.9 is definitely different than 1.8.21, I think is what we were on before. The driving physics are totally different. The cars handle very different, I would say. Well, I mean, if the ones I've driven, right, and the ones I've driven, with the exception of the new Ferrari, obviously, I've driven all of them before, since since I got into sim racing, probably at the start of the whole COVID pandemic and stuff. So I think I'm well placed to comment on that. But yeah, version 1.9 is a huge step in the right direction, I think. From a driving feel perspective, the cars feel way more alive. They're a lot more nimble. Mid-corner behaviour is vastly improved. It makes every corner an event, as opposed to falling into the whole, brake, get it pointed in, kind of like, an element of being robotic used to be rewarding in ACC from a lap time perspective. But I do think that's changed now with this latest patch. The cars feel way different, and the driving experience is much better, much better. Anyone that watches this channel knows, right, I do a lot of AMS2 content, and truth be told, the reason being is I believe that Automobilista 2 was probably the best out there from a fun driving experience perspective. How it behaved on entry, how it behaved mid-corner, how it behaved on exit, what it done above the limit, how it behaved in the fast corners, the slow corners, the direction changes. What we have here now, ACC, in my opinion, is we have bits of that Automobilista 2 dynamicism brought into the simulator. It's still, I mean, just, when we talk about the actual driving dynamics, yes, they've changed. That dynamicism is there, right? But also what I will say is that the car behaviour itself, so not just how it feels, but what the car actually does, is also different. And what I mean by that is the interaction with the curbs, as we see there, and then we see them on a few laps later where it completely overdone it. The interaction with the curbs, the bumps, how it behaves on brakes now is a lot more predictable. And what I mean by that is that when you're coming in on the brakes, let's say, and you start to lose the rear, it's a little bit more gradual. and it invites you to wrestle with it a little bit. And then I noticed mid-corner, now not so much on this car, because maybe the weight at the back of the car, the back axle with the engine placement, but I noticed on the other cars that mid-corner, and I said this earlier on, but mid-corner was able to manipulate the car more. So if I came in at, let's say, slightly the wrong angle, or I came in a little bit too hot, or I needed a bit more mid-corner rotation, in conjunction with slowing it down and getting the nose to point, I could also lightly apply throttle to help break the rear around. And what I liked about it was when you done that on previous patches of the game, so version 1.8 and 1.7 and everything before basically, to do that you would engage the traction control, and that would absolutely kill the lap time. It was almost to the point where whether you use throttle to turn or not was kind of irrelevant. Now I feel that if you use throttle to turn, it can be as beneficial as braking a bit extra, and it will vary driver to driver, car to car, track to track, and even corner to corner. And this is why I was saying earlier that I think to be fast in ACC now is going to be much more driver orientated than it is, let's say, cracking the sim orientated, where you go find a setup and then you live with that meta setup and you try to control it, let's say, for a stint or a session. Now that's not to say that another, let's say, meta best fit setup or setup approach will not raise itself, but from looking at the comments and the notes from Aris, from the developer of this, or Kunos, and everyone knows Aris does a lot of great quality videos and stuff as to what's gone into the simulator, what the physics do and all of that. From listening to him, where they've modelled in the tyre flex a lot more now with the pressure, they've modelled in the dampers in an improved way, they've modelled in the bump stops now correctly, and it calls for basically what appears to be a stiffer suspension setup in general, right? That then opens up this much wider window, in theory at least, as to what is going to work on a car or on a track. And when you get to these wider operating windows, it means that you're able to compromise at different parts of that window. So compare a letterbox to the entire window of a front door in a house, right? So before we had a letterbox where you went max negative toe, max camber, pretty high on the caster as well, just how the camber gain was modelled in the sim, and a couple of other things, right? But basically that was the window that you wanted to get pretty much every car into, and the more you could live with that setup, the better lap time you would get. But now compare the current patch to like a front door. So no longer we have a letterbox, now we have this front door, right? And it feels, at least, and I do hope this video ages well after saying this, right? But it feels at least that the setup window is so big now that in theory it shouldn't give too much room for these meta setups to actually exist. And I think that's a reflection on the approach they've taken with the physics this time around, by modelling in the tyre flex thing, having a wider operating temperature on the tyre, having a wider operating pressure. Now it's down to 26 to 27, and in between that it's going to be pretty similar in overall grip. It's more what we believe anyway, at least it's more what feel you want, whether you want a firmer feeling turn in or a softer feeling turn in, and that will vary track to track depending on the corner types and stuff. So, but yeah, I think guys, in general, this setup is going to be, or the dispatch is going to be, definitely, if you're an ACC player, driver, and you've been following the sim over the last couple of years, I think, particularly if you've driven other sims as well in that time, you will notice more the progress that this particular patch has made in the right direction. If you haven't driven other sims and seen how they've progressed and how all sims in general have gotten closer to how an actual car feels, in my opinion, right? So this started with Automobilista, or Factor with our recent Tour models and stuff like that. Now we have it in ACC, and even Race Room we're making changes as well. But now it's in ACC. So if you haven't driven other sims, and you switch on your computer and you get 1.9 downloaded, it's going to feel different, and it might feel a bit weird at first. But I can tell you now that it's definitely more realistic as to how a car behaves above the limit, like from doing track days myself and stuff like that. There's that middle ground. ACC was very close already. Automobilista 2 had that dynamicism, maybe a little teeny bit too much. Not much, but maybe, but for a GT3 car, I think ACC nails that balance absolutely perfectly. And yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see over the next week or two how things progress, like with the balance of performance, the setups to come out, the feedback from some of the esport drivers and stuff. But yeah, go play it, guys. Go and enjoy it. The more laps and the more combined hours that we all put into this sim over the next week or so, if there's anything that needs fixing, collectively, I'm sure we'll get it and highlight it to Kunos and stuff if anything needs to be done. But so far, I'm really impressed. But yeah, we'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching as always, and yeah, see you on track.